Hello everyone, good afternoon. I hope you've all had your lunch and you're ready for the next session here on the Teams and Culture stage, powered by Women in Data for both days here at Big Data London. Now, we are here to explore how a human-centric mindset is essential for delivering responsible AI in financial services. Now, for our speakers, we have Ruhi, a senior data analyst at Legal & General, Kavya, a manager at M&G, and our moderator is Kate, a senior manager at Faculty. Now, I would like to hand to our moderator, Kate, to kick off.
Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me okay? I feel like I have to speak extra loud because it is very loud in here, isn't it? Wonderful. Well, good afternoon. Welcome to our panel. So I trust that you're here because you spent the last 2 days hearing about agentic systems and you're sort of done with that bit of the agenda. And you're ready to focus on the humans that both design and consume this technology, and we're hoping that in the next half an hour we can give you some ideas on how to harness the power of those people that need to continue to be at the heart of everything we design in this space. So I hope you're all here for that very reason. By way of introduction, my name is Kate Morgan-Baker. I work at a company called Faculty. We build custom AI solutions and software in the public and private sector. We've been around about 10 years, so we like to say that we were doing AI before it was cool. Our solutions are both trad and generative AI solutions. And the company was established because we believed, the founders believed, in the power of this technology as the defining technology of our time, the kind of new general purpose technology, but with a really clear mission that it should be useful and purposeful for the individuals that we're designing it for. So, of late, actually, one of our coolest credentials is that we partner with the likes of OpenAI, DeepMind, and Anthropic to actually red team their models before they get published for general use. So for us, that's a really important step in the kind of good faith aspect of delivering AI to the world. So that's me, and I'm going to let my fellow panelists introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Ruhi Jivaraj. I'm a senior data analyst at Legal & General on the retirement institutional side. I've actually got a couple of my team here to support me, which is quite great. My role predominantly is looking at the oversight of adoption of technology within our ecosystem, just predominantly on the data and AI side, but also looking at reporting and how that looks to the end user customer. So that's pretty much what I do.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah. Hello all, I'm Kavya Vibhu. I work with M&G as an AI product manager. What brings me here is my credibility that I've led the team that developed the company's first AI platform and AI assistant. I have a background in product and engineering and combined with a domain expertise in banking. But what I have learned over the time with M&G is that it's not how early you start, it's how good you lead it on. And it's a company that manages 300 billion of customer funds, so we need to get it right. Both of us work in L&G and M&G, work in highly regulated industry, and with that comes the risk, and we need to stay focused on the human side as well. So here we are.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So as you can see, we've got really good financial services representation in these two ladies. We also are going to hear about the broader breadth of their experience in this space, not just in their current roles, but roles that have come before. So with that, let's get into the first question. We've got a couple of things that we've prepared, and then if there's time at the end, we can open it up to questions from the group. Excellent. So first and foremost, I want to think about transitions into the AI and data space, because when it comes to enabling teams and people, there's a lot of people in this room today and broader rooms that you're a part of that are looking at how to upskill themselves and others and what those capabilities need to look like. So to my panelists, what's one thing that you wish that you knew before you made the move into the data and AI space?
So for me, I started as a forensic medic, so absolutely nothing to do with data or tech, but actually to do with data. Maybe not the tech, unless you consider centrifuging tech, sure. But one thing I wish I knew before I actually made the pivot was that stuff that I learned in my role at that point was actually transferable. Stuff around curiosity, asking why we do what we do, the critical thinking element, the problem solving, and being able to work with a team to get to a fruition. I think that was something that I wish people would have said, hey, actually, you do that right now. You can actually apply that going forward. And I think that's something that from my point of view, if I would have known earlier at that time, I think I would have maybe taken the plunge a lot sooner, and I wouldn't have been so scared. And I think that the most important part for me was actually one of your biggest diversity partners, Kubrick, was my first shot in.
Nice.
So they were my first step into the data and tech world, and I looked at it and I thought, oh my God, I'm much older than the pool of these people here. I'm 26, going into a role where these are fresh grads. So I'm competing with like people who've come out of like computing science degrees. I was like, forensic medic, computing science, girl, what am I doing here? But what I ended up with and what I sort of learned from that was that whole diverse mindset that I brought from my previous role kind of changed my perspective. And I think that's something that, for me, 100%, I wish I knew a lot earlier.
Excellent. So it's never too late.
Nope.
And that diversity of perspective and expression is a really big value add to the work you do today. Excellent. Kavya, what about you?
I think curiosity. I tell you why. When I joined my role, it's a month later, ChatGPT disrupted the scene. So I went in from a non-AI role into an AI role, and I had learning on the go. So if you're curious enough, everything is out there. It's available publicly. It's on YouTube. You just seek the material and it's there for you. And today you have ChatGPT. Just ask question. Explain it to me as to a 10-year-old. And I get into engineering calls, don't understand a word a few years back, and then I learned on the go. And that's possible for anyone. Of course, I do have an engineering degree and with an MBA in strategy, but that I have been in the field for long. But I think anyone who is comes from a non-AI background, non-data background for that matter, can always get in there with the right mindset, growth mindset.
So those of us without a STEM background, proud liberal arts degree holder right here. So there's still that ability for us to engage if we have that right, the curiosity.
It's just the intent to
it.
learn. It's the same, AI field or non-AI field. You just learn on the go and you're good.
Excellent. Excellent. Key takeaway, number one, for anyone who's interested. So you got into it, you built those technical skills and capabilities, but beyond those technical skills and capabilities, what do you think is the single most important human skill needed to succeed in this space? And I guess, do you have any examples of a time when that skill made a difference in your projects, or conversely, an example where getting it wrong and not enabling and using those skills had an adverse effect?
For me, it's always been empathy and communication. I think if you are able to get into the mind of the person that you're trying to build a solution for, you'll actually find out what their pain points are. And I think by doing that and by taking some additional time to make that communication work and have that conversation, you end up opening a lot more doors where curiosity then breeds more curiosity. And I think one of the things that I've learned in my experience in both the pharmaceutical and the finance sector was when we opened the door to let the business in to say, okay, we realize you're a bit on edge about us doing this or exploring that option. What if we showed you just a little bit of what we can do? And what if we showed you, hey, what about trying it yourself and having a little bit of a glance at that? And you could see that automatically they were bought into that idea. And automatically they wanted to feel like you actually cared because you asked them, what matters to you? What do I need to do to get you your return on your interest? And for you to actually feel like I've heard your problem and I'm actually responding to you in a way that's feasible and actually amenable at a good time. So that's a good example. On the other side, it's if you don't have that, you never end up with the right solution. So you build something and you go back to them and say, hey, we built something. And they look at you and say, you didn't listen to me, did you? I wanted X, you built me A. How are we going to get from X to A all over again? And it's that flip side that you can only change through a communication. If you don't have that, you can end up building something that is completely a waste of time.
For sure.
But the other side to that is if you take them with you on that journey and communicate openly and honestly, they just want that transparency. That if you don't give it to them, you're never going to get their buy-in, no matter what you do in the future.
Yep, we've all been part of those sort of frustrated builds that go awry, and then recovering is quite difficult, isn't it?
Exactly.
What about you, Kavya?
Adding on to that, it's identifying the right problem. So there's always the business problem at hand, and there's always what the customer tells you they want, or anybody for that matter. So when you look at a problem and you look at the solution that solves the problem, so cut it short. The one thing you're looking for is problem solving, but at keeping the solution at the heart. Technology agnostic, because what I've noticed in the last 2 years when AI was happening, and still happening, but it was like everyone has this AI hammer and they're looking for that nail. Where do I hit this? That's not how it works.
Yeah.
You find the right solution for the right problem or the problem at hand. So for me, looking at it, laser focus, what's the problem at hand, and solve that for your customer stakeholder. That's the one thing you should be looking for.
Excellent. By way of an example, I think one of the worst Gen AI shaped hammer examples I've heard recently is someone that built an LLM that genuinely all it did was subtract 2 numbers. So something that you could do in Excel, someone built an LLM to do. Now, maybe they were just testing it out and that's fine, but it's also a huge amount of resource and compute power to solve what is otherwise a very simple problem. And I guess hearing you guys talk, I think a lot about, I'm a big proponent of design thinking and service design in the work that we do when we're designing our solutions. And I always put myself in the mind of my children. I have small boys, and when they play with toys, they do everything they can to break it. Or they play with it in a way that we've seen a small child play with something. They turn it around on all sides, they push the buttons, they poke stuff. That's what our colleagues and our team members are going to do with the tools that we build them. So give them the opportunity to do that, and then you really understand what problem they're trying to solve or how they feel about the thing that they're interacting with. So yeah, embrace your inner 4-year-old and just try to break stuff, see what happens. So I think the extension of that empathy concept is that then you build trust in the solutions that you're delivering to your clients, right? But what's your experience in terms of trying to build that trust with the more intractable person or the more skeptical stakeholder, be it a senior person, a middle manager who maybe has a very real fear that their job is going to change and they can't yet envision what that change is going to look like? What's your experience in terms of trying to establish and build on that trust with your stakeholders?
So I think it goes back to the concept of shared metrics and visibility. People want to see what you're doing. They want to know how you got there. So one of the things that we've tapped into quite a bit on our side is when we're building the solution, we'll invite the business into the design phase, be like, this is what we're thinking. What do you think? Do you think it's going to work? And if you think it's going to work, how do we amplify that? How do we make it quicker? How do we make it more robust? Did that trigger more questions? What are we going to do about those questions? Do you want to do a little bit more research on your side on the business concept so we can understand a bit more and we can actually give you a more well-built, well-thought-of, well-informed solution? And doing that, you have the skeptics. You're always going to have the skeptics. You're always going to have the people who say, my homegrown solution, ace, I don't want to break that. Why am I going to break that? And telling them, pushing them onto newer tech, newer platforms, there's always that fear within them to say, well, your technology looks great, AI looks great. What happens about me though? And that's kind of the stigma you want to break, because if people sit with that mindset where, oh my God, AI is going to do my job, you're never going to be able to get to the root cause of the problem you're trying to fix. So when you go and make a pitch to senior leaders or executives, they want to see what you can do. But doing that in that small room, in that design phase, you can put together a prototype and say, yo, you're going to get that in a couple of weeks. My guy here, he's working on a proof of value that we've not really had the time to build before. And we've already seen in a matter of 2 weeks what that proof of value is generating in terms of bringing people onto the pitch to say, oh my God, we've not been able to do that in our homegrown solution in God knows how long. You did that in 2 weeks?
And then you're showing, not telling. Absolutely.
Exactly. And that's where the difference is. The telling, you're kind of coaxing people to join you in that journey. If you show them and if you teach them, it's like that saying, right? You teach a man a fish, you teach him a skill for life. If you give him the food, they don't want to know.
Indeed. What would you add to that?
My biggest pain point in my current job is adoption. And the buy-in from senior leadership often trickles down and kind of establishes the trust. But how do I convince these senior folks who have kind of penalty from FCA would be their biggest fear. So with that in mind, I think we've put systems in place. So I'm not talking about the people angle that Ruhi covered. So systems in place, systems that establishes trust in data readiness for AI and data being made available, one. Secondly, observability. How do you expect AI, or are you watching your AI in some way or form? There's a lot of tools and providers out there on observability, but are you doing that for yourself? And thirdly, to ensure that the guardrails you built, the AI governance on your systems are high up there, so that the cost of making a mistake is pretty low, and then you encourage your staff to go on, play with it, see how you can break the system. That's what we do with cybersecurity today. You sent out fake emails to your staff asking them, is our organization resilient enough? We have penetration tests and whatnot on cyber. It's the same it's the same thing with AI. And you build your systems and build protection around it so that it does not fear your colleagues to use the system. And with that comes parity in AI education. So there will be 20-year-old techies in my team, ML developers or data scientists who are like gung-ho and keen to use the top end of and there are also people walking towards retirement, 50s, 60s, and then they're thinking, how do I learn this in the last minute of my career? Is it even going to, make value for my time?
For sure.
I don't want to wait for it to automate itself and understand and make me redundant. No. And then there is this middle segment, 25 to 45, who are going towards peak of their career, and they know not learning AI is going to affect them.
Yeah.
How are you going to do it? There are people, I'm taking my example, children with other factors in life, other element where you have limited time. How are you going to come to par with this latest technology? So ensuring that you train yourself on the go. Same thing that I said before. Build your systems and sorry, I'll just add this one point.
Yeah.
Bank of America CEO was in London last month, and they had a town hall in London where he said that I am scared of using AI myself. When you hear your top guy say that and then say, but let's learn this together. So that's the messaging to the organization, and that's what even our senior folks should do. Give them the confidence, and I'll back you if you make a mistake.
Absolutely, and that's how you inherently build culture, isn't it? Is just through the systems that you enable, like experimentation, and the things that you reward and incentivize, which is that honest, vulnerable admission from the senior leader, but that willingness to try anyway.
Yeah.
And you touched on the FCA. I think in terms of stakeholders and the skeptics, et cetera, in my experience, regulators, because we're dealing with a regulated industry, are always going to be, responsibly so, the biggest skeptics in the room. And in my experience, I don't know if in your experience, the sooner you get them in the room, the better, because they know that their job is to say no, but to ultimately challenge them to get to yes. So I think that that's a really key element to add to the stakeholder concept of regulated industries and the role of regulators in helping us develop solutions that people can actually use.
Absolutely.
Right, I think we're coming just to the end of time, so I'll end on one question, if that's okay. Looking ahead, what is the most important thing for companies and professionals to get right? If you had to choose one thing as we navigate a world where humans and AI are working side by side.
So I think, and I guess we've both had very different prospects here, so I've more focused on the people. She's obviously the AI expert on this panel, so I'm not going into that territory. But I think the one thing that people need to get right is your technology is your enabler to get stuff done quicker, more scaled, more governed in a more automated fashion. Your people are your differentiating factor. If you recognize that the two go hand in hand, where everyone's got a part to play, right? Your AI systems won't scale if you haven't got a person playing with it. If you don't push that system and push in elements of human-centric mindset, to be more empathetic, to think wider, to have creativity, to critically think a solution through, and ask you questions to build the right solution, you're not going to be able to provide anyone with that centralized solution. So to me, the biggest message is your people are your differentiator, but your tech is the enabler. And I think it's ensuring that you have the right balance of that. And with AI being such a heavy focus, I think the people side of it gets left behind, because with roles that we have right now, let's be completely frank, are you going to need an analyst in the next 5 years or even in the next 2 years?
Yeah.
Hell no.
Yeah.
But what am I going to do in 2 years? Am I going to say, oh my God, now I'm an AI expert? Let's be honest. I'd never be an expert of that. There's always stuff that you're going to see. I mean, the number of demos I've seen in the last day and a half, I'm mind blown.
The pace of change is astonishing.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm mind blown because the tech out there is amazing. You know it's going to go. And that's where a lot of the evolution of that is. The tech is always increasing. It's always evolving. It's the people that need to start evolving too.
Absolutely.
But that needs to happen at the same pace in those companies. And when they start to recognize that balance and build more of that, you end up with a company that's going to thrive. So,
excellent message. Excellent message. What would you finish on?
I would say I'll make it more sci-fi. Get ready to work alongside agents. You will find agents on the payroll. HR will be responsible to manage them. You will also be understanding that as for a company, if you have 500 employees, you will have 50 other agents working along with you. But how are you going to cope with that? So how do you talk the language? So before we were talking, how do I talk to technologists if I'm a non-technologist? Tomorrow you're going to be talking to, how do I get agents to work on something? It would be like a grad joins says, how are you going to teach them to do something? So this is the next level. How do I talk to an agent or manage it?
Although the positive sci-fi version of that, in my opinion, is Star Trek. That's the more benevolent version of a future of working side by side with AI. I think my final thought as hearing you guys talk is recognizing that the technology is the enabler, and that's okay. We do have 10 minutes left. Lovely. Well, we'll open up some time for questions. Technology is the enabler. But for me, it's recognizing that this doesn't have to happen to us. We don't have to resign ourselves to the fact that this is happening to us. We still have agency in how this goes and in actually putting humans at the heart of the technology implementations. So I think, not resigning ourselves to the inevitability of being made redundant, but recognizing that it is a significant shift, just as every general purpose technology that has come before shifts the way society behaves. The same happened with the conversion from the steam engine to electricity, and prior to that, man came up with fire. And so all of these general purpose technologies do represent a significant shift, but they also represent a significant opportunity. And I think companies that do keep humans at the heart of what they do, those are going to be companies with soul, and those are going to be companies whose stuff I want to buy. So absolutely. I hope that that was useful and you got some insights there. We do have a couple minutes if there are any questions from the audience. I don't know if anyone has a floating mic.
Thanks. What characteristics are you looking for in humans over the next 5 years?
Any particular characteristics?
You want to go first?
To not assume, to have a conversation before jumping to conclusion. You tell me build a blue button. Why do you need a blue button? Why not red? So it could be that I'm colorblind and I need it, to understand the crux of the problem at hand. So that I would say is ask question, don't assume.
I think from my point of view, people need to actually want to get to know people. I think the part that we're slowly losing with more technology coming into play is actual conversation with another person. Because to me, the more I see people, if you and I were in a chat room right now, but if we were sat opposite each other, how much of a conversation can we actually have? And I think to me, that's the most important thing, because at the end of the day, your relationships are what you're going to take home when you go home to talk to your family at night. If I have a friend at work, oh my God, I had a great lunch, we went for something really nice. You went out with a person. You won't go out with an agent. I think that's something that people need to remember, that yes, AI is coming in heavy, technology is evolving, but the people concept and the people connection is key. Super
And
key.
I think my ad, not to get too existential about it, but there's some really interesting research at the moment that looks at how different generations are using AI. So baby boomers, and I say this with love to the baby boomers in the room, are using it as sort of advanced SEO capability. Millennials are using it as almost an assistant, but then Gen Alpha, Gen Z, whichever the youngest generation is, are developing relationships with AI in a way that is only ever going to be a carbon copy of that human relationship that you're talking about. And I think that that's a really interesting thing for us to be aware of, particularly as we bring younger people into the organization. I would say the thing I really want to make sure doesn't happen in the skills in my team is laziness, where we're willing to just assume that what Gemini has told me is going to be true and I'm not going to challenge it and I'm just going to whack it on a slide.
Yep.
The more I see that in younger teams, the more I'm going to really hesitate to actually embrace that technology in our space. So I think that willingness to challenge what the AI has given back to you would be a key skill. Thank you for the question. Anyone
Any
else?
more questions? Anyone? Any more?
Yes.
Thank you. How do you balance the push from the executives to deliver more, quicker, faster, with the fear from the junior or the employees that are fearing for their jobs?
So expanding on that question from earlier, when we've got that pressure, which we've all been a part of, to deliver faster, where's the ROI? You told me this was going to deliver this amount of efficiency, and juniors who are purposely making the process harder because of that fear of actually being replaced.
I think going back to the prospect of all of that, there is more like a trust and change fatigue that people are going through right now. You're evolving, there's constant restructure, there's constant change, there's constant, oh my God, we need to like focus on this today. Oh, tomorrow that's not really palatable, let's go here. I think that's left people with a lot of uncertainty and a lot of, what am I doing here today? Like, if I do 2 steps more, will that keep me in the good books? Will they keep me on? I think the prospect around that is ultimately, if people don't evolve with the roles, you will end up in that kind of a position. But keeping the young or the people who are at a junior level, there needs to be an element of communication and both a top-down and a bottom-up approach where it could be, to your point, where, you know, where the Gen Z are exploring all sorts of stuff. Are you taking it up top to say, hey, dude, you're the CTO, you're in your, like, you know, late 50s, coming up to your 60s. Are you exploring tech the way we are? Are we thinking about tech the same way? And I think it's that part where when you start to bridge that gap between the generations and the roles and actually have that open dialogue and free-flowing conversation, that's when the fear starts to disseminate, because that's where people start to think, oh, actually, they are thinking about my role. It's not just me here freaking out in my head, but it's an actual prospect that people are consciously acknowledging that people are scared. So
trying to challenge that sort of traditional hierarchical one-way communication.
Exactly.
Which is, you know, in top-down financial services structures can be challenging, but that's really key to make sure that conversation happens.
Absolutely.
What do you think?
I think understanding what's non-negotiable. Is it your issue with the data? Do you trust that something can go wrong? What are the consequences that you're afraid of that's stopping you from buying in? So underlying issue with what if the worst case scenario often has helped us like kind of reverse engineer and ensure that we have already ticked the thing with FCA. We already kind of sense it in advance, and then we look at what could make it this wrong, and then we ensure that the senior leadership understands if this goes wrong, we have this system in place, it would catch it at this phase. So giving them that assurance that we have systems built around it has been my team modus operandi. If you're looking at from it, the junior folks who are not buying in, it's more of a case of lack of education there. It's not understanding. It could be a feeling of, oh, this is too complex for me, or showing them user specific. So based on your persona, or are you an equity researcher, then this would be the right use case for you using AI, or are you a senior fund manager? This is the use case for you. So making it user specific has often helped us. So we step away from that horizontal enterprise-wide chatbot mode into going vertical functional use cases and showing, again, POCs. That's been our bread and butter for a while, so that helps.
And I guess I would finish by saying that suggesting that AI solutions are primarily about efficiency, to me, is a race to the bottom. And it's the quickest way to really, I think, fuel that fear that you're going to be replaced. Whereas, and what we talk about a lot at Faculty is, rather than just make parts of a process faster, because it might be a pretty rubbish process to begin with, use that as an opportunity to reimagine the process and engage the subject matter experts in that reimagination process. And then that investment is there from both sides. So I hope that the last half an hour has given you a bit more of a sense of hope as opposed to a sense of doom around the way that AI and people are going to coexist in the future. We will be here for a little bit after, but we're going to move into the Women in Data Lounge just next door if you'd like to come find us and continue our conversation. Thank you. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you so much to our wonderful panelists. And like Kate said, they'll be in the lounge if you have any more questions. Have a lovely rest of your day, everyone.